What components did Mercedes source from American manufacturers? Here's an interesting question. Mercedes, during certain periods of time, has sourced different components from different manufacturers in the USA or even Japan. A classic example of Mercedes outsourcing the development of a product would be the installation of a Nissan engine in the CLA. But we know that Mercedes had used non-German made components in the past. And I think it's very important to go back and look at some of this stuff because the Germans are actually pretty smart when it comes to evaluating components from different countries. And one thing they figured out is Americans do know how to make AC that works. Ask the man who fixes it all the time. So, in regards to climate control systems, did you know that on 1976 through 1980 W116 chassis, 78 to 81 R107 chassis, 77 to 80 123 chassis cars, I think that's it, Mercedes used a climate control system that they bought from Chrysler and re-engineered. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, what happened was Chrysler developed the system for the Imperial. And when was the last time you saw it? 72 or 73 Chrysler Imperial. They didn't sell that many, and therefore they are not that common. And given the fact that Americans at the time typically bought cars and traded them every 2 or 3 years because cars used to be a lot cheaper, well, I don't see a lot either. But Mercedes saw the system and saw some potential in it, and then used it as a springboard to develop their own systems that worked much better. Let's just call the Chrysler system adequate, but a pain in the butt to sort out, especially when you have to fit your hand into the 1/16 center vents to get to the recirculation and center vent actuator diaphragms. And by the way, that's the only part of those actuators you can really change. You have to use a pod popper that George Murphy used to sell to take the end capsule off. Okay, next item. AC compressors. Mercedes used a lot of American compressors. In fact, that was all they used because that was generally what was available at the time. York compressors were used on the 6.3, the old 6-cylinder engines all the way up to the 1985 model year with the M110 engine. They used R4 compressors in all of the diesels from 1978 on the turbo diesels and March of 79 onward on all of the other diesels. They used this compressor as well on early M102 engines. They used the A6 on all of the M116 and M117 engines from 1970 to 1985. And of course they used the Sandin, which was an American design, on some of the aftermarket Diavia systems, which were dealer installed on numerous 123 series cars and even some 126 and 107 cars that needed AC. A number of Mercedes also used what were essentially American AC systems developed by Thermo King or Frigiking, such as the 108 and 109 chassis cars. These systems had Thermo King or Frigiking expansion valves. They had dryers. They used Parker hoses because the kits were assembled in the United States. For example, on the 113 cars, the condensers were American-made products. I think that's interesting. But I think you get the picture now with the AC systems. And by the way, Eaton, which is an American company, made a lot of the climate control solenoid valves on these systems, including ACC3 systems and even the early 126, 201, and 124 expansion valves. Imagine that I have a number of these new old stock valves, and actually they work very well. Okay, so what's another component? How about Djetronic injection? First developed, not well, but developed for the DeSoto Fireflight in 1958 and 59. Chrysler tried, but they really did not have the development dollars or the brain trust to make it work. So they scrapped their electronic fuel injection system, which was developed by Bendix, and let Bosch go have it for a discounted price. They did retain the rights to use the redeveloped system, which was basically a Bosch Djetronic system that was used on one car that I am familiar with, and that was the Chevy Vega. Has a map sensor and everything. So I thought that was really interesting. Another car that used another Mercedes that used an American product was the 300D Adenauer and 300C Adenauer. These cars used a Borg-Warner DG150 3-speed automatic transmission that Mercedes acquired through their relationship with Studebaker. Now, why on earth would Mercedes-Benz use this transmission? Well, they thought that Americans wanted an automatic, and they did, because Mercedes didn't have it at the time, but they used the DG150 to develop their own K4A gearbox that began installation in late 1960 in the W111 chassis. So I thought you guys would find that interesting as well. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video about some Mercedes cryptids, or some stuff that you probably were wondering, where did this compressor come from? Or who developed this? Or why is this component made in USA? Is it an aftermarket component? It turns out that's sometimes not the case. I hope you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you guys, next time you dig into your Mercedes and you see some American stuff, particularly in the climate control, don't forget that it was developed as part of the design in the first place and wasn't just like something that was slapped in later. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.